Okay, so by this time I am already trusting more or less that you know the basics mold shapes, but if not, I got this image for you, which is a classic. It's been around for many years, and if not, let's just do like a very crash course of this. Okay, so usually all the mold shapes for dialogues are put in groups depending of what are we going to be doing. Now talking about vowels, this would be more or less for an A. Very straightforward, just bringing the corners of the mouth up. E, or with can be also I, or double E's, or double this kind of E sound. It's pretty close to what we have in the A, but we bring the jaw a little bit closer. And what is important is that we bring the teeth a little up, so they are a little closer together. Also, what happened is that, as you can see, the corners of the mouth, they go a little bit more towards the exterior. O's, just bringing the corners a little bit more towards the front. A good detail that also helps a lot is by bringing the center of the lips, or the tips of the lips, rotating it outwards this way, so it creates the sensation that we are pulling out the lips. U is in the same realm of O, just everything a little bit more tight together. And so you can see what happened with the same kind of mouth shapes if we work with a different emotion. This would be more towards kind of like anger or surprise, or A. Same for E, O, U. Now the consonants are more, as I was saying, more into groups. There's a big group where basically we're putting lots of sounds, which are for C, D, the J, the K, N, R, S, TH sometimes, Y and Z, right? Basically it's pretty close to what we have in the E, but now everything is close. The teeth are contacting. W and Q, I don't really use this very much, but sometimes if it's like very strong, it's pretty close to what we have for the U, for the double O's, or for the U, but a little bit more intensified, like that. M, B, and P's are straightforward, just the lips together, bringing it. Usually what I do for B and P's, I bring this main control of the whole mouth up, so we create a sensation of the compression. L are very fun because we are using the tongue, so it's basically the same as I have with the A. I just bring the tongue up. Depending on what are you doing, maybe if you're doing like a D or a TH2, you can do a variation of this, which is with closing a little bit more the mouth, and bringing the teeth, the lower teeth up, and showing now the tip of the tongue. I really like doing this. This is more kind of Aardman style, but it's very nice. And finally, F. F is kind of like a 20% of an O, because we want to create that kind of sensation that lips are pulling, the top lip is pulling a little bit up like that, okay? And I'm helping with this control that basically controls the center of the teeth, in order to get a little more extreme, that tip of the teeth out. So then I can insert my lower lip under it. So that's it. Crash course on mouth shapes for dialogue. Now that we are a little clear of what can be the main mouth shapes that we are going to be working on, the workflow is going to be for Lipsync divided in two stages. One is going to be, let's say, mechanical or repetitive. This is the one where we are just basically trying to get whatever we hear, those mouse shapes working good in terms of shape, in terms of timing, and in terms of emotion. So everything is where it has to happen in looking how it has to happen. And the second workflow, or the second stage of this workflow, is where we work more in the creative part of it, where we basically just work with those mouse shapes that are already in place, and we add some curves in the corners of the mouth, we add some squash and stretch, we add that kind of flesh and organic feeling to it. So let's work with one of the part of this of the shot and see more or less how do I apply that. All right, so the first thing I do in this case is always just focusing in very small parts. The goal of this is that as we start, in order to identify what are those mouse shapes, I recommend you to use your body or your own face in order to know what are you working on. So because of that, it's always just good to focus on a very small part. So the first thing I will do is just to get a small piece of audio that I can see I can handle, so I can reproduce with my own mouth, so I can more or less see what is going on in my mouth. So
how to do impression.
For showing purposes, I'm going to be using this part, just this.
How to do impressions.
This is actually what I would pick, right? This small, just very small sentence.
How to do impressions.
I don't even care if it's well done or bad done in the playlist. What I just want is to get that piece of the audio so I can hear it.
How to do impressions. How to do impressions.
How to do impressions. So I try to mimic how is the actor doing it. If you do it by mind, if you, let's say, if you know that there is an A, and there is an M, and there is an E and that, and then you start to do it just because of how is it written, you're gonna find that sometimes maybe you are marking things that really maybe the character is not really marking. What you're trying to do is really to give the apparent synchronization. So for that, you need to try to mimic what is the actor saying, right? So
how to do impressions.
How to do impressions. How to do impressions. How to do impressions. So I just study myself. I can look at the camera and see how I'm doing. How to do impressions. How to do impressions. How to do impressions. How to do. So probably even actually I go even smaller than that. How to do.
How to do impressions.
How to do. How to do. How to do. So I just stick on that process and I try to get the essence of what is it that I'm getting. How to do. So you can see that I start with a big A. How to do. How to do. How to do. And actually the same one that I have for how, I stay there in that how and I do to do in the same mouth shape. Some people, if they would do this process, really writing it down and trying to do it, let's say, sound by sound, maybe they would mark the T, how to do. Maybe they would do that, right? But if we hear this,
impressions. How to do.
How to do. It's so fast. How to do. How to do. How to do. How to do. We just it feels like we are actually going to need those two, right? How to do. So once I have that, I'm going to just try to get those mouth shapes and try to put it in the right timing. Again, remember that we are going to be using the rule of the 2 frames earlier. Whatever is, if I'm doing a ha, that's an accent, so I already have it. So we've done this process, but just so you remember, let's say if I'm going to be doing the to do, to, I'm going to be looking for that to. This is the one. This is happening in the frame 4x6. So what I'm going to do, I will create this mouth shape for this sound. That means that I will have to do 2 frames earlier, 1 and 2. Okay? So that's the rule that I'm going to be doing. And that's the process that I'm going to be repeating. I hear it, very small sections. I try to do it with my mouth. I try to understand how is my mouth working in overall in the main shapes of it. And then I try to put it in the right frame by just the rule of the 2 frames earlier of whatever we are trying to match in what we see or what we hear. We go and we do it 2 frames earlier. Okay, let's do that.
How to do impressions. How to do impressions. How to do impressions.
Before doing that, actually, I'm going to be doing impressions because it's so close, how to do impressions, that I rather do that all in the same in the same kind of process or in the same batch without not play blasting. But so you can see that even though before I play blast and I check, I'm just doing like very small, very small, very small. So first I've done what I think more or less is how to do. Now I want to do impressions. Impressions. So again, I do the same thing. I hear it. When you're more or less familiar with the audio, I've heard this so many times that more or less I can reproduce it in my head. I just need to, you can just scramble more or less to get an idea and to remind what is going on. And you get a very good feedback of impressions, how the things are going. Impressions. So I do the same process. I hear it, I do it again. Impressions. How to do impressions. How to do impressions. So seems like after the do, I go actually almost. The E is very fast, so I'm gonna really try to do more the because you have that gim and a p, you have an m and a p. So how to do I'm gonna try maybe to go straight from after the O, maybe to directly to the M. Impressions. So you create the impressions. So I'm gonna be doing impressions. Okay, I'm gonna try to do that, see how it feels, so you can see it. All right, so this is what I got.
How to do impressions. How to do impressions. How to do impressions. How to do impressions.
So as you can see, this is more or less what we talk about. I go first to the ow. This is an accent, we already have it. How, as you can see, I keep actually just that for the whole how to do impressions. I feel that it's so fast that I'm not even marking the O of the impressions. That's why I'm saying I don't write whatever the character is saying and then I do create a mouse shape for each of those letters. I don't. What I do is I act it out because the actor may be saying it so fast or maybe saying it in a way where some of those mouse shapes, they don't really need to be marked. So that's why I do that. So as you can see, I've how to do impressions, and I go from impre straight to the ends, N and S, which is more or less this. Impressions. I'm not even doing the O.
How to do impressions.
Because also, if you hear it,
how to do impressions.
Impressions. I know that in a word, in my limited English, I know that there is an O written in that word. But if we hear it, how the actor is doing it.
Impressions. 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 Impressions.
He's not saying that, oh, impressions. He's just going straight from impressions. So that's what I found out. That's a very good way that's a very good reason to why you want to do it first. Study yourself, look at the mirror, look at the camera, or just doing it yourself and auto-observe or self-observe yourself. Okay. So this is pretty much it for the first stage. After that, what I will do, after more or less I get, let's say that maybe I do this process for the first 100 and 200 frames. I try to look for those kind of creative decisions that, depending on your style or what you like to do or not, you can apply later, like some kind of movements. I will just in the next stage, I'm just gonna give you some examples of what things you could do in order to apply, let's say, that creative layer on top of this first stage of, let's say, the mechanical pass of Lipsync.